Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today I'm your host Alex and I'm joined by my friends Jem and Matt. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content. Or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. And it's going to be our first episode of 2025, which centres around gaming news stories and adjacent and impactful news stories. Just a little sort of content warning for the episode. For anyone listening after the 20th of January, we will be talking about recent news topics. So if that feels a little too overwhelming and too much for you right now, then we suggest that you kindly skip this episode and come back a little later, because we'll be talking about recent news events, which are a little bit depressing to say the least. So feel free to skip if you feel like that's the best thing for your mental health, and we won't hold it against you. All right, without further ado then, what we're going to do for this episode is talk all about our gaming news stories, what news stories have been happening since the start of the year, how are those impacting on gaming, what does everyone in the gaming world need to be knowing about, basically. So, one of the things that caught our attention, I think, around Christmas time was the news of the metaverse and such like. So Meta platforms ending a fact-checking program that it operates, and essentially this story has snowballed in recent weeks. So I'm going to give you a kind of summary. I think it was kind of initially came out in early January and updated on sort of the 10th of January with the news that Meta and Amazon are scaling back their diversity programs, joining firms across corporate America that are retreating from hiring and training initiatives criticised by conservatives, citing legal and political risks. So how does that impact on gaming, you might ask? And that's what we're here to discuss. Because we all know about the metaverse being a particularly new portion of the gaming world, and obviously the fact-checking is important for a number of reasons, and we'll come on to discuss that. But yeah, so I'm kind of going to open up the table to you both and ask you what piqued your interest about this particular story, and why does it matter for gaming?
So I have lots of thoughts about this. Yeah. I wrote my master's about the Me Too movement on Twitter, now known as X, and one of the things that I commented at the sort of the end of the master's was that we don't appreciate how powerful these social media platforms are and how influential they are, and that until we recognise that, there's always going to be a risk, there's always going to be a danger of that falling into an individual's hand or a bad actor's control. And it was really interesting because it was like 2 years after my master's had been completed that Elon Musk brought Twitter. And I think people were really shocked at the time. It was sort of like, oh, but this is our space, and you can't own our space. It's our space. And I think people had not clocked. I mean, part of the reason why I was talking about it was because I was looking at, was Twitter part of the public sphere? So was it actually providing a space for democratic debate and discussion? And the public sphere is a sort of sociological term which talks about a space within which people can talk and exchange ideas about the current sort of political situation and the social situation in a sort of is supposedly a very democratic and equal way. I have lots of issues with how it used to be, but that's what the concept is. So here we had a situation where we were talking about whether or not Twitter was a public sphere, and what I was saying was, well, no, it's not, because it's a privately owned entity, and at that time it was owned by a board of people. So there were lots of different people, many of whom had dubious backgrounds and things, but it was owned by a group of people, and now it is owned by an individual. I mean, it was scary enough when it was owned by a group of people, because the algorithms mean that you don't know what information is going to be put in front of you. So what does all this have to do with Meta and with Zuckerberg's recent announcement and gaming? Well, I think most people are of the opinion that this was a way for Zuckerberg to suck up to the incoming president, and who was inaugurated yesterday in the US. And I think that the fact that that this shift in policy is only going to apply in the US. It's supposedly not going to apply outside of the US, and that's because outside of the US there are regional rules and regulations around what can and can't be done. So there's that, and also, being cynical, it only matters inside the US if you're trying to please Trump. So he's following suit, and I think what's really interesting is that he is following Elon Musk into the sort of inner circle with Trump, and Bezos is in there as well. And so we have all these people who are so powerful that making decisions that are aimed at pleasing somebody who just outright lies to get votes and to make the world the way that he wants it to be. And you know, I don't think it's unreasonable of me to say that Trump lies, because there are numerous articles out there fact-checking just his speech from yesterday, when he made multiple statements that are strictly not true. So why does it matter what Zuckerberg does on Meta? Why does it matter what happens on Facebook? It matters because this is a massive source of information for our population globally. It matters because it means that there's going to be a huge increase in misinformation and disinformation put out there, intentionally and unintentionally. And it matters because this is not in isolation. This is in the context of Trump. This is in the context of Elon sort of cozying up to him. This is in the context of this bro culture, this tech bro culture that we're seeing. You know, and he didn't just remove the fact checking. He then went on to say that businesses needed to have more masculine energy, and there's this whole like laddish culture going on, and it's part of a whole misogynistic push. And will that impact the games industry? Probably not immediately, but will it make it a lot harder for companies to make the changes that we spend so much time talking about here? Absolutely, of course it is, because we're seeing a shift, a tectonic shift in the systems, in the political landscape of the US, and that will have a knock-on effect around the world, especially as they are making changes to the DEI policies and other similar woke attitudes. So yeah, I think it is going to have a knock-on effect, and I think not a direct effect, but a knock-on effect would be my guess.
Definitely. And we talk a lot about wokeness on the pod and the kind of culture wars that have been raging for the last couple of years, and now it's really kind of accelerated with this because I don't know what the stats are, but I'd say the vast majority of us interact with Meta in some way or another. If we are on social media, they've got Instagram, they've got Facebook, they've got WhatsApp, so it's quite a large contingent of the world's global population that are going to be exposed to these platforms. Like you said, Jem, I'm just going to pick up on some of the quotes from Zuckerberg and from Meta itself. So it says that it's scrapping diversity, equity and inclusion efforts due to a shifting legal and policy landscape, which is code for we want to support Donald Trump. Walmart and McDonald's are also among other firms to have made similar decisions regarding diversity efforts since Trump won re-election, which is also interesting to read about as well. And its argument really is about increasing free speech is the argument that they give. But of course we've talked about how hollow that argument is really. It's just a word they like to use to kind of justify discriminatory practices and to marginalise groups of society which are already marginalised enough, because they feel like this is the whole thing where there's so many layers to it. When we think about intersectionality, which we do a lot on the pod as well, and we think about what parts of ourselves make ourselves as human beings, what sections of society and the way that we see those sections of society, how do those impact on people's views of us? So essentially, you've got all the straight white old men over here saying, well, you're taking lots of things away from us. If we make it equal, or if you want to make it equal, that means you're taking away what we had. But actually, we're just levelling the platform. And they think we're getting more up here, we're getting extra, because we're getting special treatment and equality and diversity and all these extra bits and pieces, when actually, we're just trying to get up to
and you literally have the three wealthiest men on the planet going, these minorities and women everywhere, they're taking all of your money and stuff that belongs to you, when literally all of the money is going to those three sat there.
And they have unimaginable wealth. I don't think we could even begin to compute how much wealth that they have.
Technically, they have very little wealth because they don't get taxed on it. somehow it's still, but just it doesn't make sense that there's a level of money where you earn less than it, you don't pay any tax. You pay a bit more, you pay 10%, 20%, up to 50%, and then sometimes even more. It should be more for people who make a lot of money, but then somewhere between there and a couple of million, it goes down to 1%.
Yeah.
Nowhere, and that's because of either laws that have loopholes or just complete deregulation, which is the reason that the wealthiest men on the planet are cozying up to Trump and telling him he's the best, and is because they want deregulation. And that's what this anti-woke stuff is about, because human rights cost money, and HR costs money, and equality costs money because it's expensive to have people be treated the way everyone should be treated. And so there's the money side of it for them, but I think by far the biggest side of it is the egotistical side.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Because Meta have just laid off 5% of their workforce.
I was about to bring that story up as well. Yeah, thanks, Matt. No, it's 5% of jobs are cut, and they are, quote, the lowest performers. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if a large number of them were union members, and because the thing that powerful ruling class people hate the absolute most are union people, because they're the only way that can actually, doesn't matter how much money you have, if you have 100,000 workers who stop working for a month, then eventually that's going to take a toll on you. And when the less like legal rights that workers have, the more power that these ruling class people have, and they're always going to be wanting more. And literally Trump has come in and has literally come in the ground running, because he goes, I fucked up as hard as it could possibly be fucked up the last time, and he was pussyfooting around then, and now he's going, right, I'm going to get as much money as possible, which it's just it's stunning to see over $1 trillion sat around him in one like plane, on one picture on a plane, and they're going, oh no, it's the illegal immigrants and the homeless people and the black people, and they're going, it's them that have all your money. And it's really interesting because Bezos and Zuckerberg are proper die-hard serious businessmen, cutthroat businessmen, who have built extraordinary things. You can't take away from them what they've built, and they're cozying up to Trump because he's good for their business. Whereas Elon Musk is just he's not that. He's this. I heard a fabulous. You know how I say that most men get stop developing after the age of 15, and they're sort of stuck there. I've watched a comedy podcast where a comedian put it so much more elegantly and captured what I mean. It's that all these young, all these men in this sort of that anti-woke sphere. It's like they think it's their second go at secondary school.
Yeah.
It was that time when they were attracted to everyone but didn't get anywhere, where they wanted to be the bully, they wanted to be the cool kids, and that's what Elon Musk is. He's going, yeah, I'm awesome, I want to be cool. Whereas one of the most useful things he's ever done, which people have forgotten about so quickly, was when people were in the aftermath of that healthcare CEO being assassinated. People were literally everyone in America and lots of people around the world said, well, he's responsible for the suffering and deaths of hundreds of thousands of people as well for his own benefit. And then people go, the defenders of it were going, well, that's the system. This is the healthcare system. And Elon Musk said, showing how obvious the system is, he came in and said, look, in capitalism, businesses answer to the shareholders, and the CEOs have a fiduciary duty to maximize profits. And in order to do that, you have to spend as little money. And everyone should look at him and go, that's what all these people think. That's what all the CEOs think that people are worshipping. That's what Mark Zuckerberg thinks. That's what Jeff Bezos think. Literally all they're thinking is, how do I cut costs so I can maximize profits? And when he goes, right, we're going to make it so you can say the N-word in the office, which is what plenty of people want to be able to make, impose their bile on people.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it will be, oh, by the way, your pension's going away. No more pensions. No more paid holiday. Minimum wage will never go up. It hasn't gone up for nearly 15 years. And it's just all these opportunities of people need to be going. The only hope is unions in these places at this stage. But then the more you sowing division, then the harder it is to unionize as well. So it's all pretty.
I mean, I think you made absolutely the right point there, Matt. I mean, it's so depressing that people seem to fall for the argument that, you know, that the enemy are the weakest people in society, the people with the least amount of, I don't mean as in they are weak individually, I mean they have the weakest amount of power, the smallest amount of power, and the most powerless, the most needy, the most irresponsible in that way, for the situation, and yet they are held responsible for it by these people who have so much that we can't even conceive of it. And I think one of the things that really struck me when Zuckerberg was talking about how the country's been, I think he said it had been neutered, was if you have these extremely wealthy men, and we're not talking just one, we're talking multiple of them, we're talking at least 5, I think there's more, but like you said, you know, those guys on the plane, if we talk about those, these are the most powerful, richest, most successful men in the world, and they think that things suck for them. What hope have the rest of us got? None. I mean, we're so far away from that. It's just a ridiculous argument when you take a step back from it. I want to just give some statistics because I love a statistic. And so what I wanted to say was that, you know, like this sort of world that doesn't have enough masculine energy, that doesn't have enough, you know, men in the workforce, that's been neutered. Let's just say 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are female. This was in 23. 10%. This, in Biden's government, there was 48% of US cabinet and cabinet level people were made up of women. But it still wasn't 50%, and it certainly wasn't more than 50%. And as you move through state legislators and the US House of Representatives, it was 28%, and US Senate, it was 25%. So this neutered country that they're talking about is still being run, vastly run, by a majority male leadership. So none of it makes any sense. It's all just smoke and mirrors. It's all just lies to cover up, as you said, Matt, you know, a land grab. It's a land grab. It's a money grab. It's a power grab. It's just, it's embarrassing for them, actually. I mean, I am embarrassed for them because it's pathetic. But unfortunately, it would be funny if it wasn't going to impact everyone in the world, and that's what really worries me. And changes like, you know, the fact checking on Facebook was not good, was not perfect by any means. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we know plenty of situations where people had repeatedly complained about misogynistic or racist or homophobic or transphobic language that wasn't being dealt with, and we know that there are women who are speaking out against these things all over the place, who are finding themselves attacked, and along with, you know, allies and people of any minority group. And so we know that's the case. So I am not in any way saying that it was working, but there's a difference between this isn't quite working and chucking it completely out. And we know from what's happened on X that the idea of a sort of community-led sort of management system also doesn't work, because it isn't working on X, because X is a shitstorm, to put it politely. And so it's just really sad, because what it's going to do is it's really going to pave the ground and pave the way for this current administration to talk absolute shit and basically, you know, really sow the seeds for potentially an even greater shift to the right. And, you know, like, given what Elon Musk may have done yesterday, that's terrifying. You know, that is terrifying.
I've been...
For context, for any of those people who don't know, he was giving a speech out to, was it Trump supporters? And he basically
yesterday.
Did a Nazi salute.
I think he probably thought he was dabbing. It's like...
That's what...
Yeah.
Jon Stewart from The Daily Show said that, and I think that's funny, but I don't think that's true.
Great minds think alike.
And the kind of side effect of this story also, and that's pretty predominant in online discourse, is using autism as an excuse for that, which is of course not a thing.
No.
I've seen a lot of very, very funny and witty satire on that subject, particularly like autism do's and don'ts, how to avoid doing a Nazi salute when out in public, things like that. Very, very funny. I suggest you go check them out. But yeah, it's not, the autism is not obviously the cause of someone being a bigoted, fascist, horrible person. Yeah, just put that out there. But yeah, I was going to touch on, to continue on the topic of the cuts at Meta, and the masculine energy that you mentioned, Jem. I'll give you the full sort of context, or at least a little bit more context on that. It was I'm reading from a BBC article that was published on the 14th of January, so relatively recently. It says here, Mr. Zuckerberg also appears to be overhauling his own public image. On a recent podcast with Joe Rogan, Mr. Zuckerberg said he thought companies needed more masculine energy and discussed taking up martial arts, which he said he enjoyed because he felt he could more fully express himself than in his corporate role. And this is a quote from him. When you're running a company, people typically don't want to see you like this ruthless person who's just like, I'm going to crush people I'm competing
who could snap their neck because he's a fucking mixed martial artist. What? No, go ahead.
He said. But when you're fighting, it's like, no. I think in some ways, when people see me competing in the sport, they're like, oh no, that's the real Mark. I don't know if I've intonated the correct tones there, but yeah.
Fucking
I just wondered what you guys think of that, and then also I thought about what parallels are those kind of trains of thought with the whole misogynistic gaming culture that is often encountered among certain groups within the gaming world.
I listen to so many podcasts that of just comedians going, just poking fun at these people, and Elon Musk is just, you can't argue that he's not fucking stupid. You just can't argue that, because he's just, and people saying, oh, when he does something stupid, it's because he's autistic. And you go, that's not how autism works.
Mm-mm.
You can't just say, and there's the worshipping of these tech bros.
Yeah.
And people, young men, there's this entire, just sort of ridiculous, stupid, but incredibly popular ecosystem of, these are the male role models you're supposed to be following, and they're like Jordan Peterson, who is wildly popular and successful somehow, and people just look at it from the outside, sort of being in a bubble, being outside the bubble, just looking and going, how can anyone believe any of this bullshit? And how you break into that and get people out of it and see the reality of it, and you think like, okay, who do these people worship? They worship Joe Rogan, who is the most successful podcaster to ever live. He's got a $100 million deal with Spotify, and between him and Trump, they probably have the most die-hard young male audience there are. And one thing I'm a positive thing that we actually have in the UK compared to America is we have that same like left, like it's centrist, and then there's the far right that is going off sort of to want to go crazier and crazier and crazier. But we haven't had a right-wing messiah the same way that they've had in America, and because Trump could literally do whatever he wanted. He could have done absolutely everything that he's doing already, and then he could go, we're going to have free healthcare, and he could make it happen like that. And Joe Rogan could have any number of guests on, and these people who have the power to steer the world in a better direction, and they all seem to go to this place of, oh yeah, we need more masculinity, anti-woke, and it's just to see all that potential wasted, just like with all their money. You just go, how many people could be happy forever with a fraction of that money? And it's that thing of just looking from the outside. And I can't remember if it was the three of us or if it was two of us. We were talking about how important it is to pick your battles as an average individual, because some people have more capacity for stuff, for activism, and other people find different things easier. And some things, like these stories, is it's too big for individuals to go, oh, how do I fix this? Go, right, you can't fix this on your own. What's the manageable thing you can do? And then that's why I think unions is the only way, the best option, really, because we've been told forever that politics is the way you get things done. But then Trump came in after 8 years of Obama, and then Trump has come back in after 4 years of Biden, proving that even when the supposedly rational, reasonable, centrist left-wing people win, it's still not fixing the problems. And then it allows these right-wing messiahs to come in and go, oh, they fucked it all.
I mean, yeah, I think you're right. It's a massive thing, and on an individual basis, obviously we can't make a difference to that. But we do all have a vote, and we do all have the ability to vote with our wallets and our feet. And we can make choices about what we support and what we don't support, and we can talk to our friends and family, because they also have little power, and we all have little power. And so I have to say, yesterday I really did my best not to watch too much of the news, because it made me feel ill. Because I can't identify with these people. I can't. It's not just a slightly different perspective on the world. It's radically different from me, and I just can't get behind it at all. And it makes me feel ill to see the way that they're manipulating people, and to see the joy with which they are leading to the potential deaths of people, and all of those things I just find disgraceful, because, as you say, Matt, these are people that have huge amount of power and could be a force for good, and are choosing for their own personal gain not to be. So I found it really difficult. But one of the things that I thought today about it was, I don't have a lot of power, I don't have a lot of voice, but I do have this podcast with you guys, and so that was one of the things. I was like, okay, well, we can come on and we can talk about it from our little perspective, and a few people will see it and hear and may agree, may not, but at least people will think about it. At least we're putting that view out there and letting other people who may have more power know that we're there, we're with them, and I think that's how I felt when I did the Women's March when Trump came into power back in 2016, and that I felt the same then. I felt it there's only there's little things we can do, but we can, if we all do a little, that does add up to a lot. So I'm seeing it about sort of radical resistance and, all of those ways that we can support local organisations. And as you say, Matt, supporting and joining our organisations that can step out there and be a larger voice for us, I think is so important.